far so good. Kind of preparing for this actually Halloween convention that's going on here in Los Angeles, and I created this Mike the Mime character,
Yes.
and so they're going to allow me to debut it at the VIP party on tomorrow night, and
Nice.
you know it, it's nerve wracking because I don't know how many hundreds of hardcore, Michael Myers fans are going to be there, and hopefully they love the humor of it.
Oh,
My
yeah.
But if you know my, Jason Lives, you know that I can't do horror without comedy. So
Exactly.
little tribute to Michael is definitely has a, tongue in cheek approach.
For sure. Yeah. Horror and comedy, they always go hand in hand. So yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to go down really, really well.
Yeah.
Because when I watched it, I was in stitches, man. It was hilarious. So it was
Glad you like.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we're everyone welcome to Hellhounds of Horror. We're joined tonight this evening by the legend that is Mr. Tom McLoughlin. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much for joining us this evening.
You're very welcome. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored to have you here, and on behalf of the other two as well, they're honored as well. Um, I'm just going to start by saying that Jason Lives is by far my favorite Friday the 13th movie. And I'm not just saying that just because you're here, but I've been preaching this for years. Al, his favorite is part five.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an ongoing thing where I tell him that part six is better and he tells me that part five is better. So that's like an ongoing thing between us. We had CJ on, I think, maybe a couple of months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he said nothing but praise towards you and the production and his experience there. So um, let's start from the beginning of that.
All right.
About how we approached to do part six.
I had done a low budget film, One Dark Night,
Yep.
and that was, I guess that we actually shot it in '81, and it came out in '83. It just got held up with the production company,
Right.
and that became sort of my calling card. I took that around every place trying to get my next job, and it finally found its way to Paramount. And Frank Mancuso Jr. saw the film, and they were kind of upset about the fan response on part five.
Yeah.
It just, it wasn't Jason. So he liked the style of what I had done with my One Dark Night, that it was kind of gothic, and approached things in a way that, he thought might be interesting to put me into a Friday. And so I think still to this day, I'm the only guy that's written and directed one. So he gave
Oh.
me basically total control to kind of make the movie I wanted, including, the comedy and bringing kids into it and doing underwater fight and, car chase and all this stuff that usually is not in a Friday, and still bring it in on the budget that, we were given. So yeah, it kind of came about just sort of lucky, it just, happened to fall into the right hands.
Fantastic. And I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. I was going to say that as well. There's a lot of stuff that was in part six that had never been done before, and I think it was a really fresh idea, especially following the backlash after part five. Because I think when I watched, because I've watched the Crystal Lake Memories documentary a number of times now, and it kind of made me upset that it wasn't until it was released on VHS
Mm-hmm.
as to when it started to see some sort of cult following, because a lot of people were not happy with part five.
Mm-hmm.
How was it going into that? Had you seen any of the Friday the 13th up until that point, or
Well, I saw the first one,
right?
which
Yeah,
I really liked. And so when I got the job, I said, as I do with any film, I've got to do massive research. I've got to learn everything that I can. So they set me up in a screening room at Paramount, and literally I watched, from part one all the way up to part five back to back.
right.
Uh, which luckily I go to a lot of, movie marathons and horror movie marathons. So I could handle, just keep watching them, but and made notes through the whole thing. And I found there was, the legend sort of disappeared at a certain point, and there were certain things that, were more like part 3 had the great 3D gimmick to it. And then I think part 4 is my favorite, because it just has, I think, just a better story, altogether. Joe Zito, I thought, did a really good job.
Oh yeah.
And part 5, it wasn't like it was a bad horror movie. It just ultimately wasn't a Jason movie. And it had, qualities that were very different from any of the other movies. In the Danny Steinman, his background was to go a little more towards the sex aspect of it, and which again is sort of part of the iconic thing of serial killers and somehow killing people who are either thinking about sex or they just had it, or whatever. So I basically said, I'm going to start mine like pretending part 5 didn't actually happen, that Tommy, was institutionalized as he was, in part 5, but we're going to pick it up right after he's gotten out, and he just has to see that Jason is dead, for him to be able to sleep at night. So I just kind of followed it up, from 4 on.
For sure, and I think part 5, it definitely got the same sort of response as Halloween part 3, the Season of the Witch. Yeah. Fantastic movie, but because it didn't have Michael Myers, people felt almost cheated. I mean, and great cast. Tom Atkins is fantastic in it. It's a great story, but it just didn't get the success it needed at the time. It was always after, and it's still. I think it still holds up today. Same with part 6. They still hold up.
It affected. It affected a couple of things. One, they always waited 2 years between the movies so that there'd be this want to see. But Paramount was so afraid that they were going to lose their franchise that they put Jason Lives in, put it up a year after the other one. So the bad side of that was a lot of people were still upset that part 5 ended with Tommy putting on the mask, and it's like, oh shit, are we going to not get Jason again on the next one? So a lot of people didn't come. So as a result, it didn't have the kind of opening that 1 through 5 had. So I had to kind of suffer that, but we got actually good reviews, and in the long run, it's been amazing because for reasons I don't quite understand, every year we get bigger and bigger fan base, and more and more mail I get and emails, and how many people, love the film, and we still have like sold out screenings, midnight screenings, or, and I've traveled around the country. It's just incredible what a following it has. And you're right. I mean, most of this came off of the VHS and, DVD. And, so many people discover this stuff, at home, and then, becomes kind of a party video too.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's obviously the aspect with, them replacing Jason at the beginning, or replacing the actor that played Jason in the production. I know that it wasn't your decision to do so, but I mean, how did that affect that? That wouldn't have affected the script, right? Everything would have been the same. It just was replacing A with B and just moving forward.
You mean in terms of the Jason that was in mine?
Yes, in yours, because it changed partway through because it wasn't the same. It wasn't CJ to begin with. He wasn't the first choice. Did that?
Well, it bothered me in that it sort of happened without my involvement. That they were getting the dailies of the first week we were shooting, and back at Paramount they had decided that Dan looked like he was gaining too much weight, and he didn't seem, the lumbering and all the rest of that he brought to the role, to me, was very much in keeping with the way we had seen Jason before. But, they just sort of, let him know that he was done, and let me know there was a new guy coming in. And I was like, what? Wait a minute. So and then I still to this day never got a chance to, talk to Dan and say I'm really sorry that occurred. And, you know, I tried to reach out to him, but I think he was just, you know, really upset. But he's gone on to be like the premier second unit director on all the, you know, recent James Bond movies and all the, what's the one with Matt Damon?
The Bourne?
Bourne Identity and Bourne Supremacy and all that. It's, you know, he's got a hell of a good career, so he didn't really need to, you know, angst too much about Jason.
For sure, yeah.
And then CJ came in, and CJ was much more what I was kind of hoping I could do with Jason, is make him a little more robotic in a way, because he's brought back from the dead. So, you know, it's not like a lumbering Walking Dead. It's much more, he's sort of energized, you know, almost like a Terminator.
Yeah.
And CJ coming out of the service, you know, he really had that, you know, that body type and that ability to move like that. So I embraced that, and, you know, obviously, you know, he's certainly my favorite Jason.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because when we spoke to him, Part 6 is his favorite. He doesn't think that any of the others existed. But an interesting thing that he told us was that only within the past couple of years, the likes of Kane Hodder, Steve Dash, he goes around the convention circuit with them in costume, photo ops and stuff like that. They didn't know that he didn't come from like a stunt background. They were shocked to find that out. Apparently, it was a couple of years ago on a panel. Someone asked a question about it, and they were just like, wait, what? They just assumed, just because he done so well, they just assumed that he came from a stunt background. But I think it's just the stature and
and a Marine. I mean, you know, the thing about you know, talking to actors and talking to stuntmen, you kind of explain what you want, and they go, okay, all right, let me see what I can do. Yeah, and with CJ, I would give him some direction. You go, yes, sir, yes, sir. I mean, it was just very military, and whatever I asked, he just did. And I go, you okay with this? Yes, sir, I'm fine. You know, he executed things in a way that it was like he had no fear, you know, and he trusted what the stunt coordinator told him. And, you know, he did the job. So, yeah, I could see how most people would say, well, that's got to be stuntman training. It's just good Marine training.
For sure. And I mean, well, the stunt with him underwater, which I think you mentioned in the documentary, that it was filmed in your parents' swimming pool in California. Is that right?
Part of it was, yeah.
The close-ups. Yeah. I mean, what kind of military training would you get for being put underneath water for that amount of time? Although there's safety measures involved, it must be for me, it's a terrifying experience, because I'm horrified and terrified of open water. So when he told me that, I was like, oh, that wouldn't have been me.
Yeah. Well, he had, you know, as he says, you know, there was a signal that he would give, you know, the guys that were underwater with him, that bring him over air if he needed it, or if he needed to come up. Because, the whole thing with the chain and all that, you know, certainly weighing down. And, you know, and you couldn't put, you know, styrofoam chain because it would float. You know, we had to put as much reality in there as we could, and then also try to be as safe as possible.
For sure, definitely. And I mean, what did your parents think of that? I mean, they obviously must have been supportive enough to say, yeah, you can use a swimming pool to drown someone. Like, what was their reaction when you first told them?
Well, it basically was like one of the big thrills for my dad. He was a USC film student, and so all of my early inspiration of wanting to make movies totally came from him, because he wanted to do that with his career and his life, and he didn't have any connections. He did, you know, he was now like, you know, close to 40 when he got out of school after the war and the Second World War and things. So basically, I kind of inherited his dreams. And so when I said, you know, we would like to come over and shoot in the backyard, he couldn't have been more thrilled. And then I said, well, we're going to like chop up Jason's head, so it's going to get pretty mucky in here. You know, that's okay. We'll get it cleaned. It'll be fine, you know. So, yeah, he was out there with his little camera taking photos like any other, you know, tourist or fan. And, you know, we just paid to get the pool properly cleaned, and, you know, that was that.
That's brilliant. I mean, that must have made you feel great, as a person, but as a filmmaker, that you've got that support from your parents to do these things in their swimming pool. It definitely wouldn't have been mine. Definitely wouldn't have been mine. No, that's incredible. And then you also come from a mime background as well. Why don't you tell us a bit more about that? How did you get into doing the mime work?
Well, I kind of have to go back. Like I said, my father really inspired me with wanting to do movies, and the house we lived in was right next to the backlots of MGM Studios in Culver City.
Cool.
So as a kid, I'd take my little 8mm camera and either jump the fence or crawl under the fence with my friends, and we would make movies on the weekend, in the real, film sets. So that really was what, I wanted to do. And my dad also was a magician through vaudeville, and he had all this magic equipment. So I learned how to perform magic, and I did like birthday parties and anything I could, school events. And with that money, I would pay for my films, as a kid.
Nice.
And I started doing that about 7 and through, about 12, I guess. And then the Beatles hit. And so life changed. Suddenly, no more magic, no more movies. It was rock and roll. And, me and my mates all got, this thing in our heads that we didn't care if we got kicked out of high school for having long hair. We were going to do this because the girls loved it and we loved the music. And so that was, all of the 60s for me was that being, a rock and roller. And we opened for the Doors and Iron Butterfly and Love and, all the iconic Sunset Strip groups at that time. And then I kept wanting to be more of a visual performer than my heroes, which were, Mick Jagger and Roger Daltrey and James Brown and all these people that put on a show. And I guess whatever I was doing triggered some people to say, did you ever study mime? And I didn't even know what the word meant. But when things started to get ugly here in Los Angeles with the Manson murders and Jimi Hendrix died and Brian Jones had already died and Keith Moon had died and Janis Joplin had died and Jim Morrison died, I just started thinking maybe rock and roll might not be the thing to be doing right now. So I met the French mime Marcel Marceau when he came to town, and I kind of showed him backstage what I did. And he said, well, why don't you come to Paris? I'm opening a school. So I took a couple of straight jobs, made as much money as I could in 6 months and went over there and, kind of did the starving artist in Paris for a year and got all this, mime training and acrobatics and dance and all these things. And then came back and became a street performer, doing, visual comedy. But the original intention was to do this for rock and roll, but now I was going, well, it's really, I get a lot of mileage out of the fact that I can do comedy now. And so I kind of, shifted my gears into that. And then, ended up playing a lot of monsters, like the Bear in Prophecy. I did robots like Captain Star and the Black Hole.
Right.
Woody Allen hired me and my friends to do the robots and Sleeper. So it was like the mime training kind of allowed me to also get on movie sets, which got me excited about making movies again. So then, by 1980, so, I had like 10 years of this heavy sort of mime and film study. And then by 1980, it's ready to direct my first film. And then from there until, I guess it's like 2000, it was nothing but writing and directing and producing films, and kind of left all this other stuff alone. And then the rock and roll started up again like 7 years ago. And now I've incorporated the mime into it. I've incorporated the visual stuff that I would do in cinema and special effects and things. And the other irony is now doing this Michael Myers thing. I'm back to doing straight mime and making humor out of the fact that Michael doesn't speak and Michael has a white face. And so it would be a logical job for him to have as a street performer.
Yeah.
So it's like, I've kind of gone this full circle and waiting to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah. It's crazy that the way that it's worked out, because it was film, music, mime, and then it was film, music, mime again. Like that's That's incredible. Yeah. And I mean, some of the names that you just mentioned there, they're legendary musicians. I mean,
yeah.
What was it like meeting the likes of Jim Morrison, and did you what at the time of where you were in music? Who would you say was the biggest musician or biggest influence to you at that time that you actually had the chance of meeting that's not with us anymore?
Who's not with us?
I mean, Jim Morrison must have been huge.
Jimi Hendrix. I went to the Monterey Pop Festival, 16-year-old, and I had a band at that time with the musician and composer Henry Mancini, his son Chris, and he had 2 tickets to this thing that he didn't particularly want to go to, and he gave them to me and Chris, and we drove up to Monterey and sat front row center for the entire Monterey Pop Festival. So you can imagine a couple of 16-year-olds just having their mind completely fried over seeing, the Who and Jimi Hendrix and Otis Redding, and I mean the list goes on and on and on of how many great artists were at that, and that just became like all those people just had a huge influence. No question, the Rolling Stones did. I love the Beatles. The Beatles are always going to be the inspiration for all of us, because if they didn't have that incredible success, there wouldn't be all these people, kind of jumping on the bandwagon. It's sort of like, took Michael Myers and Halloween to make the Masked, Killer popular. And without him, there wouldn't be so many of these other movies, including, the Jason films. So there was a lot of influences. James Brown was a huge influence. I never met him. Met the Stones once. Jimi Hendrix I met. I'm trying to think who. Jim Morrison, of course. Jim was so loaded all the time in those days. It's just like he fell off the stage one night and everybody thought he killed himself, but he was so stoned, he just popped right back up and went back on stage like nothing happened. And so, I mean, he was somebody that, I don't know how you would get to know him. And even in that movie they didn't really open up much of, his real private life. I don't think, either there was much or there wasn't something in there that the family didn't want.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. And some of the people you've just mentioned, like, they were huge influences for me. I mean, I'm not 30 yet, but my huge influence, because I played guitar. I went to school for music, and the one person that I wanted to be like was Jimi Hendrix.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get a left-handed Fender, but I got a Fender Strat. Always wanted like the white Fender Strat, and like just beat the hell out of that thing. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I saw this guy, heard this music, and it just changed my life forever. I'm like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And then the more and more I played, the more, because my grandfather, he is a huge influence on me, and he told me one time that he went to they both live. My grandparents both live in Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
They went to the same hotel where the Rolling Stones were playing, in this tiny little like hallway in Scotland, and it was one of their first ever tours that they'd ever done. They had never met each other at that point, but they both went to the same show, and they just, like, my he's a huge Stones fan more than he is the Beatles, but he still loves it, and he said from that's what led him to do music. So he studied. Well, he didn't study. He was just naturally gifted. He sung. He played in a band, and that's where it all comes from. All stems from the music of the '60s, and I just always wanted to be like Jimi Hendrix. So that's amazing that you.
Oh yeah, and still to this day, it's like he represents that theatrical and musical just brilliance, that I haven't really seen other than Prince. Anybody that sort of embraces that ability to just be dazzling on stage and charismatic, and then play so well. But even Prince can't play like Hendrix. I mean, that's a whole nother.
I mean, Prince as well. Prince was a magnificent guitar player. One of the first videos I ever saw of Prince was the George Harrison tribute concert, I believe. And they had like
Mhm.
Tom Petty and like all these people on stage, and they were playing "While My Guitar Gently Weeps,"
Yeah,
and everyone was taking their turns at solo, and like you just seen this like purple suit in the background, not really doing much, and then it was Prince, and he just walks
yeah,
out with his Fender Telecaster and just rips this solo just out of nowhere, and then just
yeah,
walks straight back off and just continues to play rhythm, and I was like, whoa, who's
yeah,
this guy? And then it just stems off into magic, really. So
yeah.
that's awesome.
It's amazing how, we've lost so many of these people, and it's like they've influenced so many artists, and people that aren't even musicians. There's just something about them that they aspire to be special like that, and the great artists do that to people to just inspire them, and good athletes and stuff too. To
Yeah,
be
exactly.
work harder at stuff that they did.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the same goes for filmmakers too. I mean, uh, some people will see a movie and they'll just be instantly just inspired and they'll go and create. And it's a beautiful thing. And I think it's starting to get lost nowadays, but it's slowly working its way back into society.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of that, is there any sort of modern horror movies? Because you're obviously a horror movie fan yourself. Is there any modern horror movies that you've seen in the past, say, 5 or 6 years that you've thought, "Wow, this is a great horror movie"? Is there any movies that stick out to you in the past couple of
Yeah.
years?
Well, I mean, the great hope obviously is the Halloween coming
Oh
up.
my god, I'm so excited!
So I mean, everybody, yeah, it's just like hoping that the pre-hype, that we started getting is gonna, we don't. Hopefully, the expectations won't be so high that it's like,
Yeah,
it's work. But I just somehow think it's gonna make for really great, modern, going back to that '70s, feel,
yeah,
picture. And then there's been just like a lot of films that, to me, that I don't know if I like them because they remind me of the '70s movies and '80s movies. It Follows was
oh
one that
yeah,
was really great, and uh, Heredity is another one with
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
that use of silence,
Mhm.
just amazing. Um, Get Out, which everybody calls a horror movie, but to me, it was like a suspense thriller. But it delivered so strongly on that horrific element in some of
Yeah.
those sequences, as people just went, "No, that's a horror movie," But
Oh,
I do make a delineation between something that's in the horror category, or in the the torture porn kind of category, or something that's more just a heavy duty suspense film that scares you,
yeah.
or thrills you. So yeah, but it's really been a handful of stuff. There was some that have make a noble try at it, and I'm very big on going to see these horror movies, in particular, first day, first show, and
Mm.
where the crowd that really wants to see it are there, and I'm told basically how to feel based on how they're reacting. And I came out of a generation where, when we'd go to horror movies, the audience screamed at the screen. They got up and down. I mean, the first time, I saw Halloween was at the first screening, in '78.
Wow.
And, you've never seen people take off like that, in up and down in the chairs, and popcorn flying in the air from fear, jumping out of their seats. It was amazing. Exorcist also was one of those ones that, but people were throwing up, passing out. There was ambulance in front of it. So this, these days, it's like people are so much more chill about the whole experience.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because of television and being able to watch movies on your phone and computer and things, that it's less of a let it out and just kind of hold it in, because you wouldn't be screaming and yelling usually, when you're watching stuff at home.
Yeah.
Um, but when it does happen, it's amazing. And I went to it with those same sort of expectations, and I really liked the movie. I thought they did a great job with it, but the kids were the things to me that was so stellar, that they made this
Yes.
movie really work from the kids' perspective, and of course I love Pennywise. But I went to 3 different screenings, going, they've got to react to this thing. They got and
And it just
it
wasn't
was
there.
so small, and yet it was, of course, a huge hit. People loved it and talked about it, and
Hmm.
hopefully they'll be able to make the magic happen twice, with the next one.
For sure.
So, I'm probably not remembering a couple of films too. I don't know. I teach film directing and film production at Chapman University in Orange
Oh,
County.
right.
So I get the wonderful thing of being able to bounce off stuff with this generation that, just graduated high school. They're in the 4 years of college, and then some are grad students who are, in their mid-20s to later. So it's a great place to go, okay, guys, what's good? What have you seen? What do you love? Let's talk about this. And it just amazes me how many of them just love the 80s movies.
Yeah.
And I'm like shocked, because when we were making them, we were thinking these aren't as good as the 70s movies. God, those are the great ones. So it's like every generation, thinks that they're, just going to be copying somebody else. But the truth is, you have to copy,
Yeah.
and then you make it your own.
Hmm.
So just part of the process of being an artist.
Exactly. Exactly. And a lot of stuff nowadays, they're making it like a throwback to that era that was so successful and
Yeah.
so influential. So one movie in particular I saw relatively recently was called The Barn,
Uh-huh.
and I think Linnea Quigley's in it, and Ari Lehman.
Uh-huh.
He's in it as well, and I really really enjoyed it. And I mean, it touches on like the spirit of Halloween and kind of like trick or treat,
Mm-hmm.
the traditions that come with Halloween, and how if you don't obey them, then bad stuff's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it was a really cool setting. They're going to go to this rock concert. They're rebellious teens, and then they end up stopping for gas in this town. And it turns out that there's this evil spirit that's in the town related to Halloween, and like
Mm-hmm.
fantastic movie. Again, another low budget, um, and just fun movie. So that's one I definitely recommend. And also Terrifier, if you've
Oh yeah, that I saw. That was
yeah.
great. Yeah, I saw that on tape. Unfortunately, I would have loved to see that in the theater.
Oh yeah, me too.
But he was a great villain, and that classic, almost Freddy Krueger, approach. But even going further. Um, but yeah, when you mentioned the barn, what was the other movie that was the witch? Did I
Right.
lose you?
I've actually never seen The Witch.
It's what you would call a really classy movie. I mean,
Right.
it's speak in that old English manner. I don't even know what you call that particular language, but I saw it kind of lost the audience from time to time, but when they get back into the horror sequences, boy, the crowd was right there, really loving it.
Nice.
And then what did I just see? Hellfest.
Hellfest. I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, that's a real throwback to like Funhouse that Toby Hooper did, and
Yeah.
you know, and a great idea, which is these haunts that they put up every year at Halloween with the mazes and stuff.
Yeah.
Setting those in a carnival and having a real sicko murderer in there that's just kind of like Michael Myers. He's doing it for the sport of killing,
Mm.
and it felt like such a throwback for me that it wasn't as scary as much as it was just fascinating to see how they just kind of did all the rules and kind of made it work.
Yeah.
So
No, I've heard a lot of really good things about Hellfest. It's one I'm definitely going to check out soon. Um, yeah, that's really cool. Okay, we got a question here from someone in the chat. Shattered Perfection. She's asked, what was the hardest challenge for you overall for this film, meaning Friday the 13th Part 6, as the director? What was the biggest challenge that you faced doing that movie?
um, oh god, there was I mean, it's always the challenge of making sure that you make the schedule,
Right, yeah.
And I was doing all this overly ambitious stuff, which made it, hard because the production manager would try to, trim my wings, many times, just to make sure that we made the schedule. But the thing I think I was most scared about was the thing that we did the very last, shot of the movie, which was, well, I can't say it's the last shot, last sequence in the movie, which is the motorhome. That I wanted that thing
Oh,
to
yeah,
go
yeah.
airborne, and whatever happened is going to happen. And we put about 8 cameras on it, and kind of had this good old boy stuntman down there that that came to the set dressed in this Evil Knievel outfit. And I thought, oh God, I hope this guy doesn't kill himself. That to have somebody die doing a stunt that you thought up, but I was like on my knees, like praying when that thing hit the ramp, and it all worked out great. I mean, it came off looking great, and that shot with CJ standing on
Oh,
top
yeah.
is like an iconic, Friday the 13th shot. So, and if you notice on that shot, you can just see the light coming up in the sky. I mean, we just made it before the sun. So that probably was the toughest thing to
Oh, I bet.
actually execute, at least for my anxiety.
I bet. Because, I mean, that seems like one of those, like, you've got one chance of doing this because you don't want to have to get another RV and then
Yeah.
wait another day. And then, so that was a one and done. And that's a tough thing to deal with. So I'm not surprised that you had like anxiety with that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. My favorite scene, the most iconic one, was the cemetery when Jason first puts the mask on and then
Uh-huh.
sort of snaps around, and
Yeah.
then he's holding the piece of fence, and then it goes into the eye.
Hmm.
The James Bond
Yeah.
element where he comes out and he slashes the screen, was that something that you'd thought prior, or
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was in the script. It
brilliant?
was it was a way of making the audience realize that we're I'm going to make him look like he's a superstar, coming in closer and closer on him as that when he turned the camera. And then just that thing that I thought at that time, the James Bond was the biggest franchise, in terms of how many movies it had made. And somehow I just thought it'd be cool to see Jason walk across that that little circle and then slash instead of shoot. And it kind of saved our ass for critics, because they went, well, the combination of that and the guy looking in the camera saying some folks have a strange idea of entertainment, those two things made people go, they're having fun with this. You can't hate it, you know just because it's killing a bunch of people. It's a ride, it's a thrill ride. And a kind of an exercise in setting up characters that hopefully you like, and then you're a little upset that they get killed, as opposed to the other horror thing of just set them up, make them despicable, and you sort of enjoy watching them die. And I really wanted to go the other way with it.
Yeah, for sure. And the scene with Jason, he throws this it's like a spear through the car window
Yeah.
and almost impaling your sweet wife,
Former, former sweet wife.
former sweet wife.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, for me, that would have been something that would have given me more anxiety than the RV. That would have been a scary thing.
It didn't seem like it at the time it was going to be scary, because this goes back to him and the Marine training,
Yeah,
is that all he was supposed to do, and we had one time we could do it because we had one window. It's the typical low budget stuff. Everything is like, you better get it on the first one because you're never going to have it if you don't. And all CJ was supposed to do is to ram that spear, towards Nancy, who was sitting in the driver's seat, and then she was going to fall off to the side. So she would clear, it would get impaled kind of, between the steering wheel and the seat.
right.
But
Yeah,
being trained, when when he starts to, you know, move towards the window, and she starts moving, he that spear just tracked her like an animal, and he just went right with her and went in. And I mean, yeah, just grazed past her, which
Wow.
made the shot that much more exciting because it looked like he really went after her. But it was, okay, well, we got that, and we certainly don't want to ever try that again.
Oh, okay.
But I don't even think she realized that she was going to be in danger. None of us did. The thing that was tougher was keeping her underwater, with a regulator, with all
Right.
that mud and stuff, because that, she had to do her own stunt and, have her head in a brace underwater. So it was, that's the thing she's probably complained about more than anything else, because it was freezing. She was breathing, in mud and, doing this very memorable scene with the American Express card.
Yes. That and again, that goes back to saying how people would react in the cinema.
Yeah, they really. Yeah, I would try to set up, things that the audience would provide the punchline. So that was a perfect example. There is that we purposely held on the card long enough that there would always be, some wanker in the back that would go, "Don't leave home without it," and the whole audience would laugh. This guy would think he was the most inventive guy ever, which is great, and it provided the audience with a real participation within the film. And it was just great to kind of trigger things with the audience that they would respond to, and it really would had a party atmosphere. I mean, so much so the first time we showed Jason Lives at the studio, and we brought in an audience that just really wanted to see it.
Yeah,
they were so loud that you couldn't hear the movie at all. I sat there as the director going, they're not listening to anything that's going on. They're just enjoying this. I don't know how many beers they had or how many joints they smoked, but they were high and having a ball. And, I thought, well, if it does that to other audiences, then, they're going to go, oh, you got to see it. It's like a party. And, sometimes that would happen, particularly at the later shows, the audience really participated.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think when I watched the documentary, that's when I realized, because I didn't when I first saw the movie, I was too young to understand what an American Express card was.
Yeah,
I'd only seen them in movies, and then coming from Scotland, you never really see American Express commercials there, so it was lost on me. And then when I watched Crystal Lake Memories, and then it was like, oh yeah, don't leave home without it. I'm like, oh okay,
yeah,
I get it now. Smart, very smart.
Unfortunately, it's a dated joke now that commercial, that saying is not around. But there, at that time, it was so prevalent, that it got, a huge laugh, since it was, something that people really could relate to. But that's the problem whenever you put in stuff that's, contemporary, at a certain point, it's, going to outdate itself.
Exactly. And then another great aspect about the movie was obviously the music. Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
One of my favorite songs by Alice Cooper is "The Man Behind the Mask." Was that another idea that you had? I'm going to get Alice Cooper. That's the rock star coming out. Was that your idea prior to making the movie, or?
No, I would love to take credit for it, especially with my background, and I mean, we tempt the movie with. I think we actually had one of his songs in there. Was it Teenage Frankenstein? Shoot, what was it? Something that we had from one of the earlier albums. I think maybe it was 18. That we had during one sequence when she was driving or something. So, we had Alice in there with no expectations that we would ever get any of these songs that we put in the temporary soundtrack until we got composer. But Frank Mancuso Jr. came to me one day and he said, Alice Cooper's really interested in writing a song. What do you think? And I go, that would be freaking amazing. Yeah. So, but the irony is, going back to my early 60s days, we performed on the same stage a number of times. He had a group called the Naz. So, and I knew him as Vincent, when we would hang out at Frank Zappa's house and stuff. So I never even saw him perform as Alice Cooper. I just knew the music, from hearing it on the radio. I didn't have any of his albums or any of that, you know. And then obviously once he got involved with doing it, and he thought it was cool when he gave us Teenage Frankenstein and Hard Rock Summer as well to put in the movie. You know, it's become sort of iconic with the film, you know, Jason and Alice together, which I think is just great. And I'm still waiting for that day when, you know, I can shake his hand and say thank you. We still have not crossed paths after all this time.
Never met him?
No.
Wow.
No, it's weird. But as I said, I knew him and talked with him and stuff,
Yeah.
you know, back, and I guess I was probably 66, 67.
Right.
19, I mean, so way back. But, you know, a fan met him and said, you know, Tom McLoughlin sings "A Man Behind the Mask" with his band. You would love to do that with you sometime, you know. And Alice said, yeah, let's see if we can work that out. That'd be cool. So that was, you know, great to hear. And I'm hoping we can pull that off one day.
Oh, that would be, because Ari Lehman, he performs as first Jason. So, I mean, there has to be at some point, even if there's a little slimmer of hope where you guys are in the same time at a convention. Oh man, that would sell out.
Yeah, it's been, you know, I've gone to a few conventions where I perform, you know, usually also Halloween time, the band, we do Monster Mash and we do Sympathy for the Devil. Nice. And I Put a Spell on You, and of course, The Man Behind the Mask, you know, and so a number of those sort of dark or monster, monster-based type songs. And, you know, it's fun to do Alice's voice, you know, and you know, do that number. And for fans, you know, it's great. For people who don't know the movie, you know, the song is just a, you know, cool song. But for fans, it's a whole different thing.
Oh, absolutely. So if you're going to sit down and watch a horror movie, I'm curious to know, what's your go-to snack if you're going to sit down and watch a horror movie?
You know, I'm one of those people, if I go and buy something to eat, I eat it up, you know, during the trailers. Because it's like church for me going to a film. You know, I really have to see the trailers. Food is secondary, you know, because sometimes what I'm eating, the junk food I'm eating is dinner or lunch. But then I just don't want any distractions. And at the same time, if people are talking or reacting to the movie, I don't mind. It's just when they are talking personal stuff, you know, or you know, turn around and shush them. But I really, I mean, obviously popcorn is high on the list there, and you know, Raisinets, ice cream things, you know, stuff that, you know, just stuff I shouldn't be eating.
Oh, for sure.
You know, absolutely. It's all, you know, stems from being that kid that used to, you know, skip school in elementary school and go to the movies that started at noon, you know, and buy junk food and stay in the theater until school was over and then go home. So it's like I'm still living that existence, I guess, in my head.
Brilliant. Yeah. The whole scenario of going to the movies, it's definitely like a childlike thing. So you like to do that. You get the stuff that you got as a kid, and it's like this whole experience. Popcorn, Reese's, that's a common one. We like to ask everyone that. Just to see what the reaction is. I think it was Christine Elise from Child's Play 2. She played Kyle. Her answer was red wine. So we've had a lot of answers, but popcorn and like some sort of candy, that's the common one that everyone always goes to. Because again, it's an association to when you were a kid and going to the movies and getting popcorn and all that junk food, because it was an occasion. It's almost like a special occasion. So that's cool.
You know, it's frustrating when the cost of, you know, a Coke and popcorn is more than the film itself. Just bothers me because, you know, I mean, what's popcorn really worth? You know, if you put it on a, you know, a financial thing, it's like nothing. And, you know, some of these places here in Los Angeles charge, you know, $12.50, you know, for, you know, a large popcorn. And, you know, it's like, oh, you get free refills, but how many people get up out of the movie and go back and refill it, you know, while the film's going on? Very few.
Yeah.
And usually for me, those are people that aren't into it. Something's not working, that they feel like they can, you know, go up and take the time to do that. So yeah, the food aspect for a lot of people I know is like that's crucial. They've got to be, chewing on something while they watch the film. But
Exactly.
I'm much more really wanting to watch and study, and when the movie takes me completely out of my study what's going on phase, then it really works, because it's like I got to go back and see it again to see why the hell I was so affected by that.
Right, absolutely. And then most recently, I think it was the past couple of weeks, I saw that Friday the 13th Vengeance has you as a script supervisor. And obviously, CJ is going to play Elias Voorhees. What was that like to come back to the franchise after all these years, and again potentially working with CJ? What was that like?
Well, it was, I had very mixed feelings about it, because I mean, I didn't have mixed feelings about a fan base, and a fan funded project, because Never Hike Alone that Vincent did, if you've seen that, is really good.
Fantastic.
Got to be friends with Vincent, and after seeing it, and was blown away to see Tom Matthews in there.
Yeah.
They approached me and asked me about directing like a sequence in it, and I said, well, I can't because I'm a Directors Guild member, and you wouldn't want to have to pay what it would cost to have me as a union person, because you would also have to bring in a DGA assistant director and production manager. I mean, it's a whole kettle of fish. So I said, the best I can do is be a consultant on it, and any capacity like, send me the script. If you want me on the set, then you can pay to have me out there and stuff. And of course, they love that idea of me and CJ getting back together.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do whatever I can to be a part of it, but really just kind of as a outside consultant, because I want to see them make the movie they want to make. And if there's something that I think of and can toss it out there and they like it, great. More than happy to have them have it.
Absolutely. And I definitely the success of Never Hike Alone has spawned all these a massive surge in fan-made movies.
Yeah.
I think the same production company, Womp Stomp, they recently did a Friday Halloween one.
Yeah, I saw that.
I've not seen it yet, but it's on my list to watch. But Never Hike Alone, when at the very end when Tom Matthews comes out, I had that moment that we were talking about where I was screaming at the TV. I'm like, holy shit, this is great. This is great. And he's playing, he plays Tommy Jarvis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's even better.
Yeah. There was some other reference to my film there as well. And because I saw it in a theater, one of the special screenings they had. And all these Friday people, were coming up to me and go, have you seen this yet? And I said, no. And they go, oh boy, you're going to react. And I'm going, what the hell are they talking about? And then there was I can't remember exactly what it was, something during the course of the film that I thought, oh, it must be that, because that's very similar. But then when Tom Matthews showed up, I was like, holy shit, that's amazing.
It was very well done. Very well done.
Yeah.
And they've just got the Blu-rays for the the people that help fund it. So that's really cool. So that's probably going to be something that's going to come out soon. And Friday the 13th Vengeance is getting a lot of buzz online. So I'm really excited to check it out when it comes out.
I don't know if they have like a schedule yet of when they're going to shoot and all that, or if they're still trying to raise the money on that. But I just love the fact that the fans are so frustrated that they it's like, fine, they can't work out their legal deals, we're going to go out and make it ourselves. And you got to be very careful of that you don't get shut down like the way Friday the Game got shut down. And that's usually when you start making any kind of serious money. Then somebody comes out of the woods and says, hold on, that's mine, pay me or stop doing it.
Yeah.
But I'm working on a Friday thing myself, and that I can't talk too much about because, again, it's not something that, have any right to do yet until they get all this finalized. And the scary thing is, they did solve the Friday the 13th thing with Victor, but they didn't solve the Jason thing, because he has no right to the Jason, film, Jason iconic image. So I don't know who owns that, if that's New Line, if it's Paramount, if it's Warner's. Is Victor going to go into appeal, to get those rights, and the whole thing stops again as they, go into another lawsuit?
Yeah.
It all depends really on how, how much money's being offered, and, how badly somebody wants to keeping it going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it made me sad because I purchased the game when it came out on its physical release. Like, I didn't want to get it online. I wanted to get, like, I'm very much, I like tangible things, and getting movies
Yeah.
and in this case a video game. And they just, I think it was just relatively recently, Gun Media stopped any going forward with any of the new, like, skins, counselors, and stuff like that, just because of this whole lawsuit. Because the big plan apparently was that we are going to bring in the Uber Jason from Jason X, which a lot of people were excited about, because it's just a very, very different version of Jason that we're used to.
Yeah.
So that kind of got me pretty gutted, but hopefully from what's happened here, hopefully something comes out.
Yeah, it will. I mean, and I mean, unfortunately, is the way this business goes, is money drives everything.
Absolutely.
At a certain point, somebody offers up. Maybe it's all three studios, come together to do this. The Friday the 13th that they were going to shoot, I read the script of it because I was, obviously curious, since I was writing something, what they did. And I was very disappointed. And I thought, I don't know if fans would have been happy with that when it came out. It did some, had some cool ideas about kind of showing the three generations, of, the kid Jason and mother and father and Jason. But it just really felt like very much a throwback, to the 70s. And I don't know if they could have pulled it off. Maybe they could have. I don't know. I know they were scouting that same camp,
Right.
That I shot at. And so it got right up to to the last minute before it got pulled. But I feel like you gotta do something that the fans want to see, but you also got to surprise them. You got to come up with a way of approaching it that it's like, we've never seen it like that. And I'm not saying put him into outer space or hell, I'm talking about, staying within the rules, but come up with things that suddenly change aspects where you go, oh, that's cool. We haven't seen that. So, that's what I'm trying to do, and just kind of keeping it to myself until I get, some sense that there's going to be a reality of, a chance to get something made again.
Brilliant. That's so good to hear. As a fan of Friday the 13th, it's so good to hear that. And the huge surge of these fan-made movies, hopefully that makes that become a reality. And
yeah.
I mean, because you've already been there, and you've already brought a new sensibility to the franchise and to Jason as a character, I think a lot of people are going to be very excited to see what you come up with, me especially. So
Yeah,
I'm 100% in your corner for that, man. I really hope that comes to fruition.
Yeah, I promise it'll be a good surprise, and something that a lot of people go, why didn't we think of that before? So, that's always my hope, is you find something that is relatable, and elements that maybe have been talked about, but nobody had executed them yet.
For sure. Yeah. No, that's really exciting. I'm very excited for that. Is there anything else that you've got coming up? Any convention appearances? Any gigs that you've got coming up?
Well, tomorrow night is the debut of the Michael Myers Experience, Mike the Mime. That's part of the big Halloween 40th anniversary party and convention out here in Pasadena, California. And so that's like the next thing. And then the band, the Sloss, we have a number of gigs, coming up. Unfortunately, everything is in town.
Yeah.
Trying to get, east of the Mississippi, which never seems to happen. We got to New Orleans, and that's about as far as we've gotten across the United States, and then once to Spain for a festival.
Oh, cool.
But that's the thing that kind of, is the thing that kind of keeps happening. We're going on, I guess, 7 years now with the band, and it's just amazing that all of us at our ages and things that we can still keep this thing going and really give the audience a good show and hard classic rock and roll in the process. But that's all that Stones things too. I keep looking at the Stones going, if they can keep doing it in their 70s, we can keep doing it in our 60s.
Exactly.
So, they're very inspirational on that front. And then teaching, I'd love seeing the young, the next generation of filmmakers. Lots of times they put me in their movies. There was just a premiere the other night of a feature film called Rock Steady Row, that I play a very strange part as a janitor with one dead eye. And it was great to actually see myself on the big screen, which was a long time dream that I kind of, gave up. And then the new Amityville Murders, that's like the prequel to Amityville. The Sloss, our group, has 2 songs in. So
nice.
Part of the premiere of that. So it's like, I'm just trying to do as many different creative and things that I find fun. And hopefully, people will enjoy them as much as I enjoy doing them.
Absolutely. And I've got no doubt about that, because, I mean, you're a very inspiring man, a legend in the business. So I definitely wish you all the success with that, man. Even just the talk of just something Jason related or Friday the 13th related coming from you especially is going to be a huge buzz around the internet. So everyone's going to be rooting for you. But yeah, I don't have anything else down to ask you. We don't have any other questions, so I won't keep you any longer. Thank you again for joining this evening. We'll definitely keep in touch. I'm
all right, please. Yeah.
Very excited about that. So, and then if anyone's going to the convention tomorrow, definitely go and check out the Mike the Mime. It's fantastic. It's hilarious. So funny. And definitely, check it out. But thanks again for joining me tonight, Tom. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. You're great to talk with. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.